Welcome to today's science lesson, and today we are going to learn about plant kingdom. We have been covering animal kingdom, but today we shall now concentrate on plant kingdom. Plant kingdom, just like animal kingdom, they contain a number of different organisms. The organisms in the plant kingdom are classified by the way they reproduce and also whether they have well-organized system of transporting water or food within the plant, or food substances within the plant. The plant kingdom is not divided like the animal kingdom into phyla, but instead the plant kingdom is divided into divisions. Then these divisions that the plant kingdom is divided into, they are further divided into classes. Therefore, today we are going to see this, the plant kingdom, and we are also going to see the various classes that some of these plants are divided into. We can have a structural representation of this plant kingdom. We can have plants. That one is kingdom. Then from the kingdom, we can get the various divisions. So this side, we have mosses and liverworts. The mosses and liverworts are the divisions. So we have mosses and liverworts. Then here we have another division called the ferns. And then towards this end, we have another division called seed-producing plants. Therefore, we are seeing the plant kingdom is further subdivided into three divisions: the mosses and liverworts, the ferns, and the seed-producing plants. Now, when we look at the seed-producing plants, is subdivided into 4 classes. We shall write down these 4 classes that the seed-producing plants are divided into. The first class is called cycads. The second class is called the kingo. The second class is the kingo, and then the third class is called the conifers. Then we have the fourth class, which is flowering plants. Those are the 4 classes that the seed producing plants are divided into. We shall start with the first division, and the first division is the mosses and the liverworts. Then we shall go to the second division, the ferns. Then we shall finish with the seed-producing plants. Let us start with mosses and liverworts. Now, mosses and liverworts, that is our first division of plants that we intend to cover today. The information on mosses and liverworts are usually very small because they do not have any tissues to transport water or nutrients through the plant. They don't have any tissues for transporting water or food nutrients, food substance within the plant. They absorb water from the atmosphere. They absorb water from the atmosphere through their leaves. So they use their leaves to absorb water from the atmosphere and so forth. They are mostly found in damp places where they are no longer in danger of drying out. So we find that the mosses and liverworts are found in damp areas, the areas that are moist. Mosses are low-growing plants forming a mat on rocks, on trees, or on soil surface. So we are saying the mosses and liverworts, you can find them growing on rocks. They form some layers on the rocks, they can grow on the soils, and the mosses, they can still grow on trees. Spores are produced in special structures. These mosses, they have spores which are produced in special structures called sporangia. So we are saying they have spores, and we are saying these spores are produced in special structures called sporangia. The spores, of course, will be very important when it comes to production or reproduction of these particular plants. So we are saying they grow on the top of the leafy plants. The spores develop in capsules at the end of the stalk. So at the end of the stalk, you'll find the spores will develop at the end of the stalk of this particular plant, the mosses. When spores are ripe, like capsules, they open and spores are blown out by the wind. So we are being told the mosses or liverworts, when they are mature, they will always open up, and when they open up, they will be released, they will be blown out by the wind. When spores land in an area where they are suitable, and then these spores will grow into new moss plant. The spores that had been dispatched and been assisted by wind, when they reach a favorable area, they will now settle there and they will grow into a moss plant. So this is how mosses are. They are tiny plants, but they grow on rocks, they can grow on trees, and they can grow on soil surfaces. And let us now cover the second division of plants called the ferns. When we talk of the ferns, we say the ferns have got a vascular system of transporting food and water through the plant. So we are saying ferns have a way of transporting the food within them and the water that they have within them, they can be able to transport. We are also told when it comes to reproduction, we are told these mosses, these ferns, they have spores just like the mosses. They have spores, and these spores, they reproduce in a special structure called sporangia. They reproduce in a special structure called sporangia on back of most fan leaves. So behind the leaves, there are dark spots behind the leaves where this sporangia will be attached and the spores will be there. They will be able to reproduce. We have many groups of ferns. For instance, we are told that the first ferns appeared on Earth around 360 million years ago. So for us to know that the first ferns appeared so many years ago, there is what we call carbon dating. It is a scientific process whereby if you do carbon dating, you can be able to tell the fossils of this particular plant you have. You can be able to tell their first existence how many years ago. So they use carbon dating to tell that the first fern was discovered 300 million years ago, long before the flowering plants came into being. We have an example of a plant by the name Asola. The information we have about Asola is a water fern, and that it is only few centimeters across. And in contrast with the trees, ferns such as lassie trees, they grow to a height of 15 meters. We have small plants, but we have ferns which can grow very fast to the extent where they can reach 15 meters. Asola may be small, but it grows very rapid. It quickly covers the surface of a pond and a lake, giving it a green tinge. We can go to that division of plants, and the third division of plants are the seed-producing plants. Now, seed-producing plants. Now, the seed-producing plants, we know that they are divided into 4 classes. The first class are cycads, then we have the kingo, then we have the conifers, and then lastly we have the flowering plant. So when it comes to seed-producing plants, we have the seed-producing plants. They reproduce using seeds. Seeds are more complex than the spores. So when we are dealing with these seed-producing plants, we are saying the seed-producing plants are a bit more complex than the spores. We find the seeds are tough. So this third division of seed-producing plants, we have said they are complex than spores. One cell within a seed becomes a new plant. One cell within the seed becomes a new plant. There are many other cells in a seed. The other cells provide food for developing the plant until the leaves are formed. The divisions of seed-producing plants are classified into 4. The first one is cycads. The second division is the kingo. Then the third class is the conifers. And then the fourth class is the flowering plant. the cycads, the kingo, the conifers, and flowering plant. These are the 4 classes the seed-producing plant is divided into. We shall start with the cycads and see their main characteristics. Now, with the cycads, they have separate male and female plants. The male plant produces pollen in cones. The female cone produces a seed and provides some protection for the seed as the seed develops. That is how the cycads are. We have said the cycads, they are separate. We have the male and the female plant. The male plant produces pollen in cones, and the female cone produces the seed and provides some protection for the seed as it develops. When we go to the second class, the second class, the kingo. Now, the kingos, we have an example of a kingo called the kingo biloba. The kingo biloba, we are told, it is sometimes called the maidenhair fern tree. It is the only member in this class. The kingos have separate male and female trees. Male trees produce pollen in cones, and female trees produce seeds in fruit with a fleshy and smelly they produce fruit that is fleshy. Then when we come to the third class, we have the conifers. And under the conifers, we are told they produce, conifers have the male produce the pollen. The pollen, they have the pollen bearing, and the female, the seed bearing cones, and in the same tree. An example of this type of conifers, we have the cypress falls under this group. The pine belong to this group also. We also have the Australian conifers. They include the hope pine, and we also have the Wollomii pine. Yes, we also have the Wollomii pine. They are found in Australia. So it has been found that the Wollomii pine is an ancient tree. It has been found in fossils recording close to 90 million years ago. That's when Wollomii pine was discovered when they carried out carbon dating. The seeds are protected in a cone until they are ready to be released. Then the nature of the cone breaks down, and when the nature of the cone breaks down, the seed is released. The seed is very small, it is thin, and it has peppery wings, and these wings assisted to be carried by air. Yes, it can be carried by it can be blown by wind and it will be deposited in an area where it is favorable for it to grow. So we are saying examples of conifers, good examples of conifers. We have the Wollomii and Wollomii pines. We are told they came into existence 90 million years ago, according to carbon dating. And we are saying this Wollomii tree, the way they have their seeds are very small, light, tiny, and they have peppery wings. The peppery wings assist them when they are being blown by wind so that they can be carried from one end to another where the condition is favorable for them to germinate. We can now check the fourth class, that is a flowering plant. Now, when it comes flowering plants. Flowering plants, they are able to, they reproduce through seeds, and the seeds are fully protected inside the female part of the flower, which is known as the ovary. So we are saying a flowering plant, they reproduce through seeds, and these seeds are well protected inside the flowering part, a female part of the flower, which is known as the ovary. Most of the flowers produced by flowering plant are used to attract pollinators such as bees, flies, moths, birds, and birds. We are saying most of these flowering plants, they have a way of attracting the pollinators. Pollinators are some insects which will assist this particular plant to reproduce. So we are saying they will attract pollinators such as bees, flies, moths, birds, and bats. Birds and bats. They will attract this. They have some kind of a smell or a perfume, which when they release that particular perfume will attract insects to come or the bees to come along, and then the pollinators. And then we also have grass. We have grasses which also can be pollinated by wind. If they are tiny, they would be pollinated by wind. We have information that about 65% of all flowering plants are pollinated by insects. So insects are very important when it comes to pollination of flowering plant. Flowers have many characteristics that help them to attract insects. Such a characteristics, for instance, we are told the flowering plants, they have bright colors. So we are told flowering plants that have bright colors, these bright colors will tend to attract the insects so that they can assist these particular plants in pollination. And apart from having bright colors, we also are told that another characteristics, they have a perfume, they release a perfume, and this perfume attracts the insect. Apart from that, they have another sugary substance called the nectar. Oh, yes, they have another sugary substance called the nectar. Nectar is a sugary liquid. Some insects use it as food. When insects visit the flower plant to collect nectar, the pollen sticks on their body. The pollen sticks, the pollen of this particular flowering plant will stick on the body of this particular insect. And one thing we have to know about the flowering plant, the shape of the flower limits the variety of insects that can pollinate. You will find that maybe the nectar is located at the deepest part of that flowering plant, so only the insects that have long peaks can be able to get closer to nectar. So we are saying a nectar, if the nectar is at the base of the shaped flower, tube-shaped flower, then it can only be reached by insects that have long mouth parts, such as butterflies, moths, and bees. So we can see that flowering plant has a way of determining what kind of insects that can come along and are assisted in the pollination. Also, the same flowering plant have got a way of attracting these insects by having nectar. The insect will be attracted to nectar, or there is a particular perfume, and this particular perfume will attract particular pollinators, which will come to assist the particular plant. Or the particular plant has got a bright color. If it has a bright color, then some insect will be attracted to it. Therefore, it becomes a pollinator. It will assist it in its in its functions of reproduction. Now, we have covered the fourth class of the flowering plant, seed-producing plant. We can now advance ahead and say something on fungi. Fungi cannot be classified as plants because of various reasons. We had said most of the plants have a green coloring matter called chlorophyll, which enables the plants to produce food. Using the process of photosynthesis, it can be able to produce food. So this coloring matter, green coloring matter, is absent in some of the fungi, and therefore fungi cannot produce their own food. They will depend on other organisms to get the food. So we can learn something now, not on plant kingdom, but on fungi kingdom. A good example of fungi, we have some plants, fungi, yes. We have some fungi organisms that we can see with our eyes, and other we cannot. So a good example of fungi that are big enough to be seen by our naked eyes, we have the mushrooms. So mushrooms are fungi that are big enough for us to see with our naked eyes. Other fungi that are small and we cannot see them with our naked eyes unless they are magnified, we have yeast. Yeast, we cannot see it unless we are using magnifying lens, or unless we are using a microscope is when you can be able to see what a yeast is. But the activities that a yeast does are well open. We can know what the yeast does. So we are saying yeast are very small. They can only be seen through microscope, or they are microscopic. When we say an organism is microscopic, meaning you cannot see it with your naked eyes unless you are aided by a particular gadget that can magnify that particular organism so that you can be able to see their movements and their activities. So we are saying fungi cannot make their own food, and therefore they feed on other organisms. We are saying fungi cannot make their own food, they feed on other organisms. We had said if there were plants, plants have ability of making their own food, but fungi, they feed on other organisms. And when we are doing ecosystem, we learned that fungi play an important role in an ecosystem, and we call them their decomposers. They can be able to break down the waste matter into nutrients, and the nutrients will again join back the environment. So we are saying fungi are the main cause of decay. Decay is what we term as rotting. So if you can have an environment where rotting is taking place or there's a decay, what causes this kind of a decay are fungi, are a type of fungi that are responsible for causing decay. So we are saying fungi play an important role in breaking down some matter, dead matter, into nutrients, and the nutrients do join back. They join back the soil, or they become nutrients in the soil. Fungi are also important. Fungi are also important. They are a source of some medicines. Fungi are a source of some medicines. For an example, we have an antibiotic called penicillin. And we have an antibiotic called penicillin, which is prepared from penicillium. An antibiotic called penicillin is prepared from penicillium, a blue-green mold. A blue-green mold. Penicillin, we are told, is used to fight some of the bacterial diseases. Bacterial diseases. So we can see how important the fungi are. From the blue-green mold, which is a fungi, it can be used to produce antibiotic called penicillin, which can be used to fight most of diseases that are as a result of bacteria. The whole information concerning the fungi kingdom. We have said fungi kingdom, they are decomposers. They help breaking down the waste matter or the waste product back into nutrients. And as they break down this waste matter, they are able to get their food and energy for them to multiply and to grow again. We have said they don't have ability of manufacturing their own food, but they are very important. We have seen one of the importance of fungi is you can use it also as a medicine to fight some of the bacterial diseases that can come around. Let us go to the next to the next group of kingdom called Protist Kingdom. Now, this kingdom called the Protist Kingdom, most organisms in this Protist Kingdom live in water. We have said most organisms that are present in this Protist Kingdom, they have the habitat in water. Protists are more diverse than any other kingdom. What we are saying, organisms, when you compare the kingdoms that are there, we are saying organisms in this Protist Kingdom are so many, they are diverse, and they are grouped together because they do not fit in any other kingdom. An example that we can give about this Protist Kingdom, maybe we have this organism called Euglena. Yes, we have this organism called Euglena. They are fast-swimming microorganisms. What we are saying is you cannot be able to see an Euglena organism with your naked eyes because it is a microscopic organism. They live in quiet ponds and puddles. They take food from the environment and also carry out. Very funny enough, they carry out photosynthesis. We are told Euglena has a single tail known as flagellum. It has a single tail known as flagellum. And this single tail known as flagellum, just like a propeller of an aircraft, this single tail is able to ensure that this microscopic organism, it can move very fast in water. So the flagellum is there to ensure that this Euglena is able to move very fast in water from one end to another. Protists vary in many ways in the way they vary in the way they move. They also vary in the way they feed, and they also vary in the way they live. Some of the protists that contain chlorophyll, they are able to make their own food. Others are able to catch and eat food from the environment within them. But one important thing with the protists, they are very important source of food for the aquatic organism. What we are saying, some of these protists, they will be able to eat other microorganisms, others, they are able to manufacture their own food because we have some protists that have chlorophyll. But the most important thing with the protists, we are saying aquatic life, most of aquatic organisms, they feed on them. Very few protists cause diseases, and if they cause diseases, most of the diseases caused by protists that are found in tropical areas. Examples of what protists can cause, we can give an example of amoebic dysentery, an amoebic dysentery. Diarrhea is caused by drinking water which is infested or which is contaminated by protists, such as Volvox. There's a protist called Volvox, an organism. So if this one is present highly in the drinking water, then that water is contaminated and you are likely to suffer from diarrhea. We can advance to another kingdom called Manera Kingdom. Now, the Manera Kingdom includes all the organisms known as bacteria. We are saying bacteria are organisms and they have their role in the environment. So all organisms that are known as bacteria, they fall under this kingdom called Manera. The kingdom is diverse and these bacteria can only be seen by use of a microscope. It is very difficult and hard for you to see a bacteria with your naked eyes. Bacteria are normally associated with the diseases, infections, but most bacteria are harmless and some actually are good for us. We are saying not all bacteria are harmless. We are saying very few bacteria are harmful to us, but most of the bacteria are very useful to us. We have a Lacto Bacillus bacteria. Lacto Bacillus bacteria. This Lacto Bacillus bacteria, it naturally occurs among most of the dairy products. Therefore, if you have milk and that milk happens to contain any bacteria, then that bacteria most of the time is a lactobacillus bacteria. We are told that bacteria are also alive. They live in our intestines where they help in digestion. So we are saying some of the useful bacteria are found within our stomachs of human beings, and they help when it comes to digestion to ensure that the food we eat, it is broken down into substances that can be absorbed easily by the intestine so that our bodies can grow. Along with fungi, just like fungi, the bacteria are also decomposers. We had said that fungi have a responsibility of breaking down waste matter into nutrients, and the nutrients is taken back to the soil. We are saying similarly, also the bacteria have a surgical responsibility. They are able to break down waste matter into nutrients, and these nutrients again, they can join the environment. Most bacteria rely on other organisms for food. We are saying bacteria, bacteria cannot manufacture or produce their own food, but they rely on other organisms for food. Few bacteria, very few bacteria, like sulfur bacteria. There's a bacteria called sulfur bacteria. we have just a few exceptions of a sulfur bacteria and another one called cyanobacteria. Yes. And another one called cyanobacteria. These two types of bacteria, only these two types of bacteria, they are able to make their own food. But all other species or living organisms of these bacteria, they rely on other living organisms. Bacteria live in many different places, ranging from temperatures that are very low to temperatures that are very high. We have been told hot springs that are very hot up to the extent of 300 degrees centigrade. You will find some bacteria are still existing in such high temperatures. Therefore, whether we intend to boil water for drinking, we shall know that yes, we are killing a number of bacteria and fungi and so forth, but there are other bacteria we cannot just kill them when we boil water at 100 degrees centigrade. Those bacteria will be existing quite comfortably. Let us have some study questions to see whether we have grasped some important information on this kingdom. One of study questions there are questions that intend to gauge your memory in terms of recall, knowledge. You just need to remember. The first question is, name the building blocks of all living things. When we say name the building blocks of all the living things, our point that we want to communicate is, if we talk of blocks, houses are constructed using blocks. So if you use bricks, you can still construct a house. But what about when we come to living organisms? What builds these living organisms? Appropriate answer to this question are the cells. Cells are regarded as the building blocks of all living things. For instance, we have seen close to 5 kingdoms, from the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the Manera Kingdom, the Protist Kingdom, and the Fungi Kingdom. When we want to observe to see this organism, the tiniest part that we can observe of each kingdom that makes up all these organisms is a cell. From the cell, you can be able to tell the characteristics of each of the kingdoms. So a cell is very important. It is like a building block of living organisms. So the tiniest that you can go to the cell, and you see the nature and characteristics of the cell, from the nucleus to the cell wall, the cell membrane, if it is an animal cell. Then we can call that a question A. We can come to question B, and the question B is, name the classes of seed-bearing plant. Name the classes of seed-bearing plant. We had seen that the seed-bearing plant is subdivided into a number of classes. So what this question requires you, can you be able to remember, can you recall? So B, we can write, name the classes of seed-bearing plant. Those who can remember the classes of seed-bearing plant, the first class was the card, and then the second class was the kinko. That was the second class, and the third class was the conifers. If you can recall, the third class was the conifers, and then the last class was flowering plant. So flowering plant was the fourth class of these seed-bearing plants. That is question 1B. We can have another question 2A, and the question 2A is, name the plants from which we eat their. Roman number 1, we have leaves. Name the plants from which the particular part of the plant we eat the leaves. What can be the possible example of a plant when you eat leaves, you take the leaf to be a food? So we are saying, question 2A, name the question 2A, name the plants from which we eat their parts. Name the plants So we want to name the particular, we want to give a particular example from which, if we have to feed on that particular plant, then the fitting part that we are going to eat from it will be the leaves. Maybe we can say such a plant that can be, we can feed on the leaves. Maybe these plants can be vegetables. And vegetables, that one is a number of plants can be eaten as vegetable. They can produce leaves, and we can use leaves as we can feed on them. Then what about plants that the particular part that we eat from these plants stalks? So you find from stalks, the plant that you eat stalks, and you claim that's food. Maybe we can give an example of sugarcane. If you eat the sugarcane, what you are consuming is a stalk, and that stalk now is being represented as food. What about a plant when you eat seed? We feed on the seed, and we claim that seed to be food. A good example of plants, when we consume seeds, we are eating food. We can have maize, beans, wheat. There are a number of plants that we do eat the seeds as food. There are many. What kind of plants that when we eat the roots, we take the roots to be food? If it is the roots, then maybe if we are consuming the sweet potatoes, the potatoes, we can use the roots, but we know of the cassavas. We can eat the cassava and claim whatever we are consuming the cassava, we are eating the roots, and from those roots we get what we want. What about the plants that when we feed on fruits, and the fruits, we get our food? An example of where when we feed on the fruits, we are able to get enough food, then we can have example of different plants. For instance, oranges, avocados. There are a number of fruits that the number of plants we can feed on them by eating the particular part of that plant, the fruit. We can have another question that will require us to make some kind of explanation, and we can call that question 2B. And on question 2B, the question reads, explain why plants and fungi are in different kingdoms. Explain why plants and fungi are in different kingdom. With plants, plants belong to plant kingdoms, and fungi belong to fungi kingdom. Why are fungi different from the plant kingdom? Why are plants in the plant kingdom and the fungi are not in that kingdom? The best explanation when we are approaching such kind of an answer, one, the major difference that is there between plants and fungi is that plants manufacture their own food using a green substance called chlorophyll. So when they are manufacturing their own food using the green substance called chlorophyll, they trap the energy. The sun and the sun's light is trapped and becomes a source of energy, and they use that energy in a process called photosynthesis to manufacture their own food. So plants are able to manufacture their own food in a process called photosynthesis. But when we go to fungi, we are told the fungi, they lack that green coloring matter. Therefore, they cannot trap the light from the sun and convert that light from the sun into energy that they can use to manufacture their own food. And because of that is the major difference. So we find that what happens to fungi, they are decomposers. They depend on other organisms. They feed on other organisms. And by feeding on other organisms, becoming decomposers, they break down the waste matter. That's where they assist. They break down the waste matter, and this waste matter, they get their energy to grow and to move forward and to reproduce. At the same time, they ensure that their nutrients are taken back to the environment. As we come almost close to the end of this part, well, there was, when we are talking of, there's an example of, an example that will require our calculations in the animal kingdom. We want to make slide calculations, and then we are going to stop there. Let us name this question 2C. It deals from the knowledge, the information we gathered from the animal kingdom, and the question deals with slightly mathematics. We need to do a bit of calculations here. One, it is being talked of an African elephant. An African elephant weighs approximately, an African elephant with a mass a mass of 5,000 kilograms, an African elephant with a mass of 5,000 kilograms, and a blue whale, an African elephant that has a mass of 5,000 kilograms, and a blue whale that has a mass of a blue whale that has mass of 190,000 kilogram. Yes, a blue whale that has got a mass of 190 kilograms. The question here is, calculate the numbers of times heavier a blue whale is than an elephant. The question here is, calculate the number of times calculate the number of times the blue whale is heavier than an African elephant. Yes. So the approach when we want to know that, for instance, that we have an African elephant that weighs approximately 5,000 kilograms, we are comparing it with a blue whale that weighs close to 190,000 kilograms. The question requires us to calculate how many times is the blue whale heavier than an African elephant. The way we should approach this kind of a question, one, we shall divide the mass of the blue whale with the mass of an elephant. So we shall take the mass of a blue whale, which is 190,000 kilograms. Then we shall divide it with the mass of an African elephant. African elephant, which we were told is 5. Yes, we were saying for us to calculate the mass of the blue whale, we shall write 190 kilograms with the mass of an African elephant, 5,000 kilograms. Once we have done this, then we can divide. We start by cancelling the zeros, they can cancel. Then we shall remain with 190 divided by 5. This one is equals to 5, and then we divide by 190. Then we ask ourselves how many times that does 5 go into 1? It is impossible. Into 19, yes, 3 times. We multiply 3 times 5 is 15. Then we subtract, we get 4. How many times can 5 go into 4? It is impossible. Then we bring our 0. We ask ourselves how many times does 5 go into 40? Then we get it is 8 times. When we say 8 times 5, we get 40. So we know that there's nothing remaining. So we are saying that if we divide the 190,000 kilograms mass of a blue whale, we divide it with 5,000 kilograms of an African elephant, how much, and the question was, calculate the number of times a blue whale is heavier. So the most appropriate answer here is the blue whale is that 8 times heavier than an African elephant. It is that 8 times heavier than an African elephant if we carry out such a kind of division. Then we can have our last exercise that can assist us to see how much we have grasped. And here the question might only require remember or recall. Contrast the question, we can call it question 2C. And question 2C is contrast an endothermic animals with that one that is ectothermic. The question requires us to contrast endothermic, the contrast endothermic animals, contrast endothermic animals with that one of ectothermic. So the major point here is we need to know what is endothermic and what is ectothermic. For you to give an appropriate answer to approach this question, we need to know that endothermic refers to the animals that are able to generate their own heat, therefore they can control their own temperature. So we are saying endothermic are animals which have ability to regulate their temperature because they generate heat. Then when we contrast it with the ectothermic animals, we are saying ectothermic animals are cold-blooded animals and they cannot generate heat, therefore they cannot manufacture their own heat, therefore they take the temperatures of the surrounding. Today we are going to stop there for today, and our next lesson shall be on a closer look at all kingdoms, a closer look at all kingdoms, giving a particular attention to cells. We shall try to observe the cells in all the 5 kingdoms that we have gone through and see the particular differences that come in as a result of the cell. We are saying the cells are the building blocks of all the living organisms. So when we look at these cells, we can be able to differentiate a number of things. Thank you, and that is the end of today's lesson.